In this episode of Noble Conversations, we will be featuring Omoregie. Omoregie he's a storyteller, he's a filmmaker, he's a creative, but I think what he does is put an interesting twist on creative because it's less about himself and more about what's going on around him. He uses filmmaking as an avenue to pretty much just tell the world about what's going on and through a creative aspect. And I think that's very beautiful because it takes the self out of art. And I think once someone does it in a way that is really, really well, like it just goes crazy.
Yeah, because he even likened artists to medical doctors in the sense that medical doctors diagnose problems or health issues with people, while artists diagnose problems or issues in society. And I think that's just something that's very profound.
Yeah. So, and particularly speaking, he addresses things. He addresses this social and cultural injustice as well as other things such as like migration, which is a crazy thing as well. You know what I'm saying? He also has like a piece out. He also has some pieces out regarding that, and quite honestly, opened up my eyes to a lot of things that I probably didn't really consider. That I probably didn't even think of. I think what he did was open up a conversation that I didn't even think was really happening for real.
I mean, there are two things that come to mind as you say that, right? Mm-hmm. One of them is his work. I think it's called We Speak Their Names in Hushed Tones.
Yeah.
So basically, it's a story of irregular migration occurring in Nigeria, where you have people in search of a better life, right? Leaving their homes and attempting to go to Europe through the Mediterranean Sea. But there are three main things that happen when people, attempt to use that route. One is they either get killed by aquatic predators. Two, they get detained by the Libyan government for illegal migration, right? Mm. And then three, they could also be taken as victims of human trafficking. Mm. And I think he tells that story in such a way that it highlights what's going on in Nigeria, yes, but it also highlights a larger story of immigration because people migrate for different reasons. So that's social, financial, or even security reasons. And so he wants to make a conversation around migration, something that is normal for people to talk about, but also addresses difficulties as it relates to immigration in different regions of the world, whether that's in the West, the East, Africa, everywhere.
Yeah, I think that's really, really smooth. I think it goes without saying that his work is recognized. Mm-hmm. I know you mentioned that he was just in Austin here.
South by Southwest.
And out in Amsterdam. He's receiving grants to fund his artwork and all that stuff. And I don't know. I think that's crazy. Yeah. There's also an RX Prize finalist.
Yeah.
RX Prize. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. But there's the Fashola Photography Foundation Prize for his film Gray. Nomination for Edwin George Prize for photography at Future Africa Awards in 2017. So this man's been on a roll.
Oh yeah.
It seems since he picked up a camera.
Yeah, I mean he's also been featured at like CNN Africa, BBC, and I think his work really speaks for itself. Mm. I mean, he has another project he's working on now called Nation Forgotten. Mm. So basically it's a story of Nigerians who have retired, whether it's voluntary or forcefully retired, but have not been receiving their pensions for decades. I think in hundreds of billions of naira, which is equivalent of hundreds of millions of dollars. And so he tells his story through photography, showing how this has affected the livelihoods of people. Mm. And so I think he's a phenomenal artist, and definitely excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, noble conversation.
Noble conversation. Exactly. One of the quotes I saw from your previous interview, I think it was with Channels TV, which I'll just go ahead and read it. It says, "A photographer is like a medical doctor to society. You diagnose society's ailments. By doing that, you're trying to cure society's sickness." So tell us more, like, as a photographer, visual storyteller, like, what sickness are you trying to cure?
I don't. Okay, yeah, sickness is like, in that context, of course, like a metaphor for like for everything wrong with us as a people, as humans, the social ills, and when we are like, this is the path we're supposed to be, when we begin to move this way, that becomes like a sickness, and when everyone has moved this way and we create a system that basically puts some people this other way at the bottom, that's sickness, So like the artists in like from time immemorial, like I've always been like the watchtowers, like those watchmen rather at the watchtowers, saying, hey, look, there are people here that were supposed to be with us, but why they're not here, and because we sometimes those people being there might just be like a work of some few individual amongst all of us that we don't even know. But because we're all busy with ourselves and all that, busy with other things, and then we forget we don't even know and all that. So the arts has always been like, artists have always pointed us to the right paths that we should go as a society and as humans, So generally, whether you accept it or not, it's just what it is, Art is responsible for basically how we see the world and how you see the next human being, and yes, to a large extent, how you see yourself. That's music, the music you listen to, the films you watch, the photographs you look at, the ads you see on billboards as you move around your day-to-day life, the ads you listen to on the radio and all that. Those are like works of artists, like the designs, the architectural like buildings and all that you see in your cities and all that. They influence how you behave and how you see the world and how you see the next person. So so that's actually what I meant by when I said arts as photographers or whatever. Whether it's photography or any art form you choose to use to like express yourself, you're basically doing the same thing, which is of course diagnosing society of its sickness and pointing it out for treatment.
I think that's actually very profound. I feel like when I started to first get into creativity and creative ways of expression, so on and so forth, a lot of people would express and talk about art just from the lens of self. A lot of it would be self-expressive. You know what I'm saying? Art is an expression of self, an expression of this. But I think you're probably the first person to me to actually hit it on the head from that different perspective, as if like creatives, they're like the watchers, you know what I'm saying, and stuff like that. They highlight problems and diagnose problems within society to expose it in such a way to as to bring it into the limelight in a way. And I think that's very profound. And I think that's something that's most definitely seen within your work.
So it's like you see something in society and you're like, okay, something is wrong here. Let's fix it. I really like that approach. Also, you mentioned film shortly as one aspect of artistic expression. So the work that I think you were in Austin for recently was We Speak Their Names in Hushed Tones. And I think it's a virtual reality film focused on highlighting the plight of family members who have loved ones that suffered from issues as a result of irregular migration. I think one of the things you mentioned that usually happens when people leave through the Mediterranean Sea to Europe is it's either they get taken or killed by aquatic predators, or they're detained by the Libyan government, or human trafficking, and very few actually make it to their land of destination, right? So for you, creating We Speak Their Names in Hushed Tones, like what's the story behind that? Like, what inspired you to tell that story of those families?
We Speak Their Names in Hushed Tones is a documentary project. It's a kind of a multidisciplinary documentary project, like this is the first time I'm basically going to be experimenting with different kind of art forms all fused into one, photography, installation, and virtual reality, and it's a story about migration, but told from the point of view of family members this time around. So it looks at irregular migration, from the point of view of family members left behind, family members who have lost communication with their relatives who were trying to migrate to Europe through, of course, through regular routes. And at some point, they lost touch with them. And ever since, they've not heard from them. And they still believe that they'll come back someday to them. And there's somewhere that someday they'll come back home. So the work explores the psychological effects the absence is having on these families back home, in Edo State. I started from Edo State. Doesn't mean that, yeah. So I said something about Edo State and all that. There's a lot of young people. It's not peculiar to the state, though, but of course, research basically statistics shows that, you find a lot of young people there trying to go over to Europe through regular routes and all that, So the work basically explores that effect that that the absence is having on those families back home. Some of them have gone about 6-7 years not hearing from their loved ones, and they still hope. So the work tries to explore, how that's actually affecting their mental health and all that, because it is not something, because they don't really come out because they can't actually seek legal means to look for these these missing relatives, these missing relatives, because for fear of either being stigmatized or being persecuted, because it's actually against the law in Nigeria for you to knowingly, partake in the trafficking of your child or your relative, it's against the law. So when you're caught to be persecuted. But however, most of these young people live without even telling their families, They just get there somewhere and then they'll call, this is where I am now. I need money to pay, and then get on this boat and get into Europe and all that. So that's how it is for most of these family members, So for fear of either being persecuted or be stigmatized, or they don't get to speak out. So they just basically grieve in isolation, and in isolation. So because what this does when you don't have closure, it's like an open wound. That's how the heart is. When the heart is actually has been battered, and then there's still no closure. It's it's an open, a battered heart is like an open wound, without any kind of closure. And closure comes if you look at the stages of grief. All right, the stages of grief is until you get to the last stage, which is acceptance, that you get closure. Without acceptance, you don't even start. You don't talk about the healing process. So for most of them, they are still in they're still hoping. That's what hope does, and then of course why shouldn't they hope when there's really no evidence, not even a cloth. You didn't even bring back the cloth to say, okay, this was the cloth you wore, or this was there's nothing really to say this person is truly dead or this person is locked up somewhere, so that basically gives them hope, And of course, then that hope again is fueled by their religious belief. They see pastors. You're Nigerian, so you know how it is back home here. They see pastors and who see visions, and they see traditional like witch doctors who see visions, who say these persons are alive and this person is going to come back someday and all that, and then they believe so much. We are pretty spiritual people as Africans. We believe so much in the spirituality. We believe so much that nothing happens ordinarily and has been explained by the spiritual. So because of that, there's this so much hope that that some of these relatives will come back someday. So that's basically what the work explores. So one of my okay.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, I don't know if you have the answer to this, but what percentage of people actually make it to their destination, of the people that travel?
Actually, I might not have all the like the statistics in my head right now. All right, but the truth is, all right, majority of the people that are basically leave home, all right, do not actually cross over to Europe. They just they they end up in African countries, actually, in African countries, yeah.
Okay.
All right. Even though the media doesn't actually talk much about that, like the largest percentage actually don't cross over to Europe. They end up settling down in East African countries. All right. Some of them, it starts by hoping that, okay, let me just stay and raise funds so I can actually be able to raise enough money to cross over, you know? But after a while, they just see that we're actually living a good life here. So why basically go over there? And they just stay, you know? So we actually have a large percentage of people who live to actually move, to move over to Europe and ending their journey in these African countries. Sometimes some people make it to the end. They come back, of course, better than they left, you know. Some, of course, so don't make it. It's just like how it is naturally with life.
Yeah.
You know, everyone will succeed, you know. But if you look at the percentage and all that, like quite a large amount of percentage actually basically make it, you know. There's a need for us to basically like understand ourselves, understand the need. Why do people move? You know, so why do people move? You know, that's I don't think that has been. I think the media is really not, the mainstream media especially is really not doing justice to it, you know.
Yeah.
For reasons, you know, of course, for reasons obvious to everyone, you know. They creates some kind of fear about migrants coming over to want to take over jobs, take over these things, stuff like that, you know. So, you know, all we really need is like people coming. There's people like coming over to. There's really never really been like this. There's this fear like the mainstream media creates, you know. So for me, like I want to use the work to like basically for us to like have discussions on migration, you know, and ask ourselves, okay, why do people move, you know? And then of course, but this time around, I want you to see beyond those statistics, beyond those nameless faces and orange vested black bodies and black people and Arabs and Asians, and then you see on TV and all that, and then look at their names and see them as people. They had families back home, just like you. They had aspirations, and they wanted to they left home to make home better, you know. So these are like just like you. They had dreams and all that, and of course that it's actually okay to move. So what we need, the problem actually is safe passage. You know, no human should be told you can't go beyond here. This is where you can go. This is where you can't go to. All right, in God's own earth. So you can basically. So what we need is like lead like countries like the Western countries to basically like create safe passage of humans. You know, by of course through the visa policies and. Make traveling safer and cheaper, you know, and then you won't have people going through that route. Even if you have all your money today, like you really want, like even if you want to, as somebody coming from Nigeria, for instance, even if you have something genuine to come do over there and all that, the process is still very tedious, and it's created in a way that is meant to frustrate you, you know. So you when you're frustrated, even when you have the money, it is still difficult. All right, and then there's a cheaper option. So what are you left to? What are you going to do? So the whole thing is basically still falls down or falls on table of the Western government. You know, the EU, of course, it's happening too in America. You know, with the whole Mexican crossings and all that. You know, and because we all need to know that migration is it's natural. It's as old as man, you know. And a lot of Americans, you know, like a lot of young Americans are migrating from America right now. But it is not. It is
Exactly.
not news. It is not news because, of course, it's America. A lot of I was in Portugal recently, sometime last year, and all that. Like you find a lot of Americans in those Portuguese villages buying properties and all that, and they're all buying properties there in Southern Europe. They're all moving to Europe. It doesn't make the news. But it's the same thing. People leave for different reasons. Man moves when when he feels this place is going to be, when he doesn't feel safe anymore, when he feels that his children would not actually, or for instance, I don't want to start raising a family here, put my child in the school, and in the next, I'll be somewhere working, and then the next thing I'm seeing on TV, my child has been shot by some young guy with a gun.
Yeah,
So for that reason, I don't think I want to raise my family in America. I'm moving. A lot of them are moving. I've seen a lot of them. I've seen like a lot of Americans moving to Europe. It's not making the news. Why? It's America. It becomes a problem when you want to move as a black person. So the visa process is so cumbersome. Even as an artist, even when I have something that I want to go do somewhere, you tell me I can't go because I need to prove this, I need to prove that, I need to prove this, I need to do that, and all that. So so the problem is like it's a policy problem that falls on table of the Western government, So of course, my goal I want to take the work around and like have discussions, especially with young people, because I so much believe in the power of young people, to demand change.
We wholeheartedly agree with you. One thing that we place emphasis on with Noble Conversations is reconciling and reconnecting those within the diaspora with the home country. And so you mentioned something about migration, and you mentioned something about why do people want to leave? And I often ask myself the question, why don't people want to go back? And I really do resonate with you when you also mention that you just want to have that discourse and get those conversations going, because that's also something that we strive to do as well.